Hello, welcome once again to this tutorial. Here we'll be talking about one of the major category of CSS layout known as what? Flexbox. Now, let's refresh our mind on what are CSS layouts. CSS layouts are the techniques or property used in CSS to arrange and position HTML elements on a web page. Now, diving into Flexbox, or you can call it Flexbox model. Now, Flexbox is used for one-dimensional layout, that is either row or column. Now, Flexbox always consists of two aspects, which is the flex parent, or you can call it the flex container, and the flex items. Now, diving into this Flexbox proper, when we talk about flex container, a container is said to be flex container when the display property is set to what? Flex. So in this way, this my container here is a what? A flex container. And the item it contains is what? Flex items. Now I'm proceeding. There are other properties that is used on a flex container. Properties like what? Flex direction. Now flex direction specify the angle, or we can call it the direction the items are to what? To align. So it could be on what? On the main axis, which is the horizontal, or the vertical axis, which is what? The cross axis. So you can call it the main axis, horizontal, or the cross axis, which is what? The vertical axis. Now, in a container, it has these two axes. Now, first direction column specify the flex items on what? On the cross axis, which is what? The vertical axis. But we can, if you wish, you can still set it on the what? On the main axis, which is the horizontal axis. Of which by default, when you say display of flex, is automatically on what? On the main axis, which is what? The horizontal axis. Now the next property we have is what? Is justify content. Now justify content align the items when they do not use up all the what? Available space on what? The main axis. Now we have, that is on main axis, that is the horizontal. So some of the values that follow this is what? The baseline, or we can say the justify content center, the items will come to the center, or we can say justify content flex end, it will move to the right, that is the end, or we can say flex start, it will come to the left, that is the start, or we can say space around. You see, it tries to space all of them, trying to maintain equal space between each items, but then giving a unique space on the what? Extreme. The same thing with what? Space between. But the difference is that space between doesn't leave any space on the extreme, but also maintain equal space between each individual items. We also have the one we call space evenly. So space evenly create an equal space in the whole surrounding. That is between the edges of the parent div to the item, and then between the item to the item, and the item to the item, and then this item to the edges of the parent div. All of them have a unique or uniform spacing. Now, the next property we have is what? The align items. Align items also have the similar values with what? The justify content. But now, align items align the flex item when they do not use up the available space on what? The cross axis, which is what? The vertical axis. It's just like opposite with what? The justify content. Justify content aligns the items on what? The horizontal axis, which is the main axis, while align items align the items on what? The cross axis, which is what? The vertical axis. So we can see the values baseline. Can also make it center. You see it coming to the center. Can also make it flex end. The same value with the justify content. So can also make it flex start. You come to the start, and so on and so forth. Now we can, the next one on the line is what we call the flex wrap. Flex wrap. So this flex wrap specify whether the flex item should wrap or not. So you can see these two values. You can neither have flex wrap, no wrap, or we can also say flex wrap, wrap. We also have the what we call the wrap reverse. Wrap reverse. You see, it will do the like, reverse, the reverse of something. So the normal wrap is something like this. The normal wrap is something like this. Then when you say reverse, reverse of it. That's how it is. This property or this functionality is also included in flex direction. You can say row reverse or column reverse. So that's it for flex wrap. Now coming down to the what flex items, there are also other properties. So before we move to the flex item, there are one more property that is remaining, which is what align content. But this align content also have the similar values with this, but then it look a bit confusing with what align items. The difference between the two is that align content align the flex line when there is an extra space on the cross axis, and the items, that is the flex item, must be wrapped. So that is to say, before we can make use of this property align content, we should make sure that the items are what on flex wrap. So once the items are not on flex wrap, that means this property is not needed, or there is no need of what using it, because it will not be what implemented. So that is all for what align content. So that is the difference between the align content and what the align item. Though the both of them align those items on what the cross axis, but then align content is used when there is a what a flex wrap. So if the flex wrap property is not there, so the align content will not be what implemented. So now moving towards what the flex items, you can see my items here. I can decide to, okay, let me just remove these two. I see my items here. So now there are other properties that are accompanying flex items, which number one we can know as what the order property. So now these other properties specify how the display order of the flex item inside the flex container, which is the parent container. So now we have the order, we can say 1, but now this order need to be specified on a particular flex item you want to arrange. So by default, this is just the general items, which have the, if you come to my HTML, so you can see they have a general class name items. So once you call this order property on all of them, so there is no one, the browser will understand which one particular are you saying. So what we are going to do, I'm going to cut this my value and then come and specify on a particular item. Let's say item 1, and then order of what 1. So you can see now how the thing come here. So I can decide to say, okay, because by default the default value is 0, so I can decide to give it what -1, or let me change it to what order 3. You see order 3 -1, it comes here, right? So but if I give it 0 by default, you see everything returns to normal. You can see my this thing, everything returns to normal. But once I give it -1, this one will now become number 1, just like that. Just count the values like that from 0. You can count it downwards or you can count it upward, depending on what you want to achieve. So now the next one we have after the order property is what we know as what the flex grow. You see it, the flex grow. So flex grow specify how much a flex item will grow relative to the rest of the flex item. So for example, I'm still on my flex items tree, so I can decide to say flex item grow 1. You see, it grew relative to what the availability of what other flex item. So you just try to what occupy the whole of the space. So that's all about flex grow. Then the number 2 again is what we call the flex what basics. So now the flex basics specify the initial length of the flex item. The initial length of the flex item. So you can see how it works. Sorry, it has its own value. So the next one we will have is what the flex shrink. So flex shrink, it talks about how much an flex item should shrink relative to the rest of the flex items. You know what is shrink? So if I minimize this my browser, you see that this one will shrink relative to the value. So by default the value is 0. By 0 it may not shrink that much, but when I make it 5, it will shrink in 5 relative to the available space, and then that of the flex items. So what I mean is, if I try to shrink, sorry, Okay, my browser, I've reached the limit of shrinking my browser. So it will automatically shrink relative to what that number you gave it, right? So now the last but not the least is what is known as what? The align self. So the align self property, we can have baseline, center, blah blah blah. So now you see that this align self property, you see, it encounter or it counters these aligned items. So now specifying on this particular item, I told it to align what? Center. So you see that is almost off because it's no more in line with what the other flex item. So you see, you just leave them there and then come down and stay on its own. So you are particulating on a particular items you want to what? Align. So you can have other properties, I mean the values. So you can say flex end, it will go to the end. You can also say, flex start, it will go to the start, and so on and so just the same value with what the align items. But just the difference that this one is talking on a particular flex item, not the general item. And with this, we have come to the end of what? This video. See you in the next one. I hope you enjoy and you like the video.